here with the Wild and Precious Optimal Living Show. And I am super excited to be here today to be able to lead us through a talk on shoulder movement as well as the emotional component that's related to it. And so, all things that my husband and I, love to talk about every Friday on our show is anything to help increase the resilience of our brain, body, and emotional health. So with that said here, I'm just going to get us started, and I always have my notes so I can pull it out and everything. So before we get started, I wanted to pull up one of our ads here just to share with you, for those of you who are getting started with in terms of learning more about brain-based wellness. Tuesday on June 16th at 12 p.m., I'm going to be leading a brain-based health talk called Why Movement Will Help to Increase Your IQ. So oftentimes we all want to feel more smarter, right? We want to feel more focused, retain our memory. How is this supportive in terms of movement? And we're going to talk more about the articles, and we're going to do more of an interactive exercise to help you see how's your movement, how well is your brain communicating everything that's going on, and being able to help you function daily. So that health talk is actually coming up on Tuesday at 12 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. And in order to actually register for that, you can text 720-667-3650. Again, it's 720-667-3650. And text your name and your email address so that I can send you the Zoom information to sign up for this complimentary health talk. And it's about an hour long, and I guarantee that you'll walk away having a better idea of setting some goals for yourself and how you can take care of yourself better, and having more knowledge in terms of how is your brain connected to your overall state of health as well too. So with that said, I mentioned before that today we want to talk about shoulder and movement and meditation behind it. However, we want to look at the bigger picture. It's like, yeah, we all have shoulder tension, we all have pain, but what's the big deal behind that? I have that all the time, and I manage to work through it. I manage to just get through my day. Well, we're going to just delve a little bit deeper into that, and I just want to be able to point out that these are really vigilant times. So with COVID, I know that a lot of us are transitioning back to work, or if not, trying to figure out how to reopen our business, how we can best handle our clients if you're a small business owner, how you can make sure that you stay safe around people around you, social distancing. I know that there are still riots, there are still protests going on across the country, the world as well too, and bombarded with lots of different news every single day of a lot of crimes that's taking place. Just this morning, and shame on me for starting my day right off by just checking some messages on Facebook. I usually try to avoid my technology, but today I didn't do that. And one of the stories that I come across, I know that across Colorado and across Denver especially, that people are shaken up with is the fact that a shooting happened. And a shooting occurred in the Falls Ballpark Center in Denver downtown, and a young couple was shot. The girlfriend died, and the boyfriend was severely injured. And this was over their dog pooping, and the shooter just targeted them. And obviously, we can look at just that story of like, this is over poop. What's going on? However, we have to look deeper into suggesting that this man or this person was deeply disconnected. There was something that was entirely distorted in this person's world, and there was perhaps a major misconnection in his own personal life. And being a practitioner too, my mindset has been going towards what's happening to the brain, what's happening subconsciously within the person. What type of medications are they taking? What type of struggles or mental health is this person going through that he feels necessary to actually target people? So this is practice. Practice means perfect. Thank you, Henry. So I need to pull that microphone over. So with that said, one of the biggest things that we want to be able to be mindful of is there are a lot of people that are going through so many different things, and this motivates both Dr. Sam, my husband, and myself to do the work that we do to help enhance a person's health and well-being through their nervous system, through balancing their brain, through chiropractic work, because when we feel more aligned, then we can serve the community in a better way. You can serve the community in a better way. So taking care of yourself is necessary. Eating healthy is necessary. Meditation is necessary. Movement is necessary, not just for your own personal health and well-being, but the relationships that you have in your life with your family members, with your kids, and also with the community and how you're serving the community. And so being very mindful of, the things that we're being exposed to. So this is a time that is high stress, high vigilance, right? There's a lot of things that we need to pay attention to. There's a sense of safety every time we go out, and wearing a mask and social distancing, and our kids getting too close to each other, or how we're perceived if, when we go out and we cough or sneeze even, right? Those little things can accumulate in terms of vigilance. And so, so vigilant times, I feel it, and I want to ask you if you feel it. Do you feel vigilant? And what does that vigilance feel like to you in your body? Does it feel like you're constantly experiencing a headache? Does it feel like your neck has more tension, that it's harder for you to turn your body? Does it feel like your heart's constantly beating harder? Or does it just feel like depression, where you don't even really want to go out because there's something that you're not feeling a drive towards? And oftentimes when we feel something that's going on in our body, that it's maybe, it could be a mattress that you're sleeping on, or it could be something you ate the night before. But oftentimes that symptom that you're feeling tells a deeper story. It's telling you something that perhaps consciously you're not willing to face just yet, or you're avoiding, and your body is talking to you in a deeper way, in a louder way, so that you can actually start to shift your patterns. Oftentimes when we think of pain, or we think of some sort of condition, it's an inconvenience to our productive life. It interrupts the things that we want to do, the plans we make, just like COVID. It's like this really loud, it feels like for some of our own personal lives, maybe a loud symptom. It's interrupting your own personal pace of life. And during times like these, it's asking you to learn to be adaptable, to be willing to change, and willing to show up and be compassionate. So tying that back into your local problem, which is your shoulders, right? So some of you may be complaining and feeling constant shoulder tension, or perhaps you may be suffering from frozen shoulder syndrome, or you're feeling some extra pain, and it could be some sort of degeneration that's accumulated and now it's acting out. Those are so many different ways that we may struggle with shoulder tension or shoulder pain. And today I'd like to be able to explore two approaches. We're going to look at it more physiologically and understanding what is actually going on with the brain, what is going on physiologically underneath the surface with our body when we feel pain. And then also I want to explore the emotional component, which is, what are some questions, what are some ways we can understand why we feel a particular pain in our shoulder? Like, out of all parts of our body, why do we choose, why does it show up here? Why is it immobilizing you? So let's go ahead and approach it through the physiological approach first. there's an article that I actually came across recently, and it's entitled "Inhibiting the Physiological Stress Effects of Sustained Attention Tasks on Shoulder Muscle Activity." So I'm not going to go too in depth in the article. I'm just going to give you some high points behind this. The idea is the researchers wanted to find out what is the correlation between hyper or sustained attention, and how does that physiologically affect a person's well-being. And they were actually looking at it through manufacturer workers who are required to actually sit for long extended hours and automate and watch for mistakes in some of their automated tasks. So no longer are they handling heavy machinery or which may increase their chances of actual physical injury, but they're actually experiencing higher reports of stress because they're sitting there and they're having to be very vigilant on making sure that there's no mistakes in some of the machines that are more automated nowadays. And so how does that relate to their physical health? Their physical health in the sense that with increased stress, there's also correlation to a breakdown to their physical health. So a breakdown, a downward spiral of perhaps heart health, cardiovascular health, or even their musculoskeletal health as well too. So arthritic changes, tears to the ligaments and tendons, or increased muscle tone. All those different factors. So that's what the researchers were looking at. Is there a correlation between increased attention span? And they found that other researchers actually found that historically too. And how does that physiologically affect? And how does that affect breath? And so they did the research. They invited about 20 students, 18 years old, all healthy across the board, to essentially measure some of these different components. And what they found was, obviously, I think it's a no-brainer, is yes, sustained attention leads to increased stress. And when there's increased stress, that actually increases the tone of their muscles, like the trapezius muscle that extends from the skull, extends down to attaches to the shoulders and towards the middle of the back. So there's more engagement of the muscle tone there. And there's also a decrease in their carbon dioxide. I'm blanking out on the word, but carbon dioxide percentage in their body, concentration. There's the word. So concentration in the body. And so when there's a decrease in concentration of the carbon dioxide in the body, it actually changes the acid-base levels in the body. And so just even a small pH change in the body can actually alter signal to the nervous system, signal to the brain, more of a fight-flight state. So imagine that this is occurring for an 8-hour span or 10-hour span, however long these workers and manufacturer workers are working and having to have sustained attention, and that focus and that vigilance is also increasing their respiration rate, which also leads to hyperventilation, and that hyperventilation decreases the concentration of carbon dioxide. Long story short, it throws them into a fight-flight state. So chronic fight-flight state is also known as sympathetic dominance. Right? Sympathetic dominance is when your body is locked in a fight-flight state because it's most efficient. It doesn't necessarily activate, or there isn't a brake on the foot on the brake or on the gas pedal, so that your body is constantly raging in that fight-flight state. So muscle tone stays high, respiration stays high, digestion slows down, all the healing, rest, digest functions drop, and you stay in that sustained fight-flight state. So evolutionary-wise, our body can handle small doses of those fight-flight states for us to be able to get things done, make sure that everything's taken care of, the family's fed, work fed, and then we should be able to dial back, put that foot in the gas pedal, and shift into that parasympathetic mode. And the problem is with these workers, or even with the students who are participating in the study, is they find that the body doesn't know how to regulate over time, and so they stay locked in that state, and then that's where there's a correlation between stress and acute attention over time and vigilance, and then that also affects how well they're taking in breath as well too. So the good news behind that is you can start to shift that around. And so further on with this study here, the researchers found that they incorporated breath work, which I'm going to guide you through. Just even long, deep breaths can start to engage the rest, digest, and heal system, which is your parasympathetic system. And so it's a really great tool, which ties into, which I'm sure you're hearing everywhere else, meditation, the power of meditation. And so we're going to talk a little bit more about the different tools that you can use to help you relax. And we're going to dive into that towards the end of the session. But first, I wanted to tie it back into now that we have an understanding of the physiological functions of what's going on with your body when you are alert. We think about, okay, well, you may not necessarily be a manufacturer worker. However, think about times when it requires a lot of detail, a lot of attention, and you're a part of life. For example, getting taxes done, or you are working on a project that requires a lot of editing, or perhaps even watching TV and the news, or following the news, or following social media, and there's that sense and the emotional sense of vigilance, like, oh my gosh, I need to pay attention to what's going on around me because I don't want to get sick, I don't want to get hurt. And there's a lot of vigilance in that as well too. So the hyper awareness, that sustained attention, can actually wear through and affect your cognitive health. It is going to eat through your cognitive resources, from being able to retain memory, to staying focused while there's a lot of distractions around, that you can still stay focused. All those different cognitive abilities require energy. And so your brain has to be able to adapt to all those different changing tasks that you're always doing as well too. So being mindful about that, with that said, starting to dive a little bit deeper in the sense that, okay, well, I'm aware that physiologically this is happening in my body. What can I do? What's going on with, how does this relate to shoulder, right? So when there's increased tone, then oftentimes there's increased tension. Most of the workload stays with your neck and also your shoulders. So that also limits your range of motion. So abnormal output with how your body is putting out energy and how it's processing information around you is also going to distort or take away from the movement as well too, limit your range of motion. So with that said, we're going to show you a few different movements. So wanting to explore, first of all, the physiological or the emotional components behind your shoulder tension. So when we think about our shoulders, think about the Atlas statue in the Rockefeller Center in New York, where the statue, this man, is kneeled over, his head is hunched down, and he has his arms supporting the heaven, a circular ball, right, between their shoulders. So when we think about shoulder tension, when we think about stress, when you're in that fight-flight state, what happens? Your shoulders sneak up here, right? And so that shoulder tension there, also a big message behind that is the responsibilities. The responsibilities that you're hanging onto in the world, in the family, in your work. And oftentimes there's this message of like, how come I always have to do everything? I always have to make sure that this gets taken care of. And if I'm not there, if I'm not at work, my coworkers won't do it right. Or if I'm not there, my husband won't take care of my kids well. Or it's not going to be perfect unless I do it. Or I can take on more. I want to do more, and there's this effort of constantly putting ourselves out there and being able to do more and less focus on yourself. And so there's that message of like, everything always falls on my shoulder. Everything reflects back to when you think about shoulders, your everything that you do, everything that you're thinking, you're feeling, your actions, um, are when you feel tension, when you feel pain, all that is an expression of any resistance or any disconnect that's sitting there. And so, once again, shoulders are a seat of responsibility. So I just want you to take a moment to sit as you're sitting here. Notice, have you been struggling with some shoulder tension, or does it extend up to your neck? Because neck and shoulder, once I mentioned before, the physiological functions with what's happening is when we are in a stress state, a lot gets loaded into the neck muscles as well as our shoulders. So maybe your head will start to jet forward, or maybe your shoulders round forward as well too. And it also involves different activities you're doing daily. So think about when you're checking your phone, or when you're sitting in front of the computer. Everything's forward, right? What else are you doing that's also requires some forward motion, or um, head forward tilt motion? It could also be doing paperwork, or reading newspapers. It could be even when your workouts. We want to be able to strengthen our biceps. We want to strengthen our core. We want to strengthen our shoulders, or our whole entire body in certain ways. But a lot of motion tends to be between the front and back of the exercise, and motions as well too. So we do a lot of things that require that same motion of plane work. And so there's a lot of limited range of motion when we start to think about how we're moving throughout the day. How often are you twisting your body? How often are you turning and rotating your head for extended periods of time, or stretching your arms out and opening up? And then think about the emotions behind that as well too. Think about times when you feel tense. If you're watching the news, what happens with your shoulders or your arms? Perhaps there's this sense of, I'm going to cross it in front of my body. I'm going to kind of sit crouched under and holding here. Or when we're fearing something, or we're anxious about something, might not be aware of it, but you might just notice slowly the shoulders sneak up, and there's this sense of overwhelm, and it's hard to relax all of a sudden. So we're walking around just with our shoulders shrugged up, right? I'm trying to think of other instances as well too, but when we think about fear, what do? We contract and we draw center, right? This feels safe to us. Like when we're in our mom's wombs, we curl in, and this is drawing in, and all the flexor muscles are curling in. So that's in a sense, like our security. It feels overwhelming for people to open up. My arms are stretched out right now, so what is that? That's like, hey, come at me with a really big hug. I want to love on you. And when we think about social distancing, there's no hugs anymore, right? There's just, hey, let's do an elbow bump, or just like an awkward laugh about like, oh yeah, I can't shake your hand or something like that. And there's that worry behind it. And it's unfortunate, but so we're in our lives right now sitting like this, and unless we're actively engaging and opening up through exercises, through movement, through those extensions, opening our arms, what's also happening is opening up your heart center as well too. So a lot of our arms, or how our shoulders are movement, is an expression of our hearts. It's an expression of our connection. Think about the times when you embrace another person. It's not just you're just leaning in and it'd be an awkward hug, right? You just bump into each other and you just hold there. No, it's an actual come around and let me support you. Come around, let me love you. Come around, let us be together and let us be connected. And so, just with that in mind, I don't know where I was going with that, but it's just the physical expression of our body, how our arms are moving, it speaks to the world, how we gesture our hands, right? You probably wouldn't be maybe listening to me very long if I was sitting here and I'm just cross my arms in front, and shoulders hunch forward, and obviously even over the internet, or even over this different form of media, you would say, oh my gosh, she's totally unapproachable. Like, she doesn't even want to engage me. and you just, or we don't want to approach people when we see them with their shoulders come forward, or they're not even remaining or sustaining eye contact, or maybe even heart is kind of hidden. And so oftentimes those are universal signs that, hey, they're sad about something, they're uncomfortable with something, they're maybe hiding something. And so our bodies are constantly expressing that. And so with that said, a little bit more about shoulder tension now, right? When we feel the tension, then you can start to ask yourself, am I feeling resistance about something in my life right now? Am I doing something that is against what I truly want to do, but I feel like I still have to do it? There's oftentimes shoulders are a sense of feeling overburdened, and perhaps wanting to speak up, wanting to express ourselves, or yearning for something that we're not feeling fulfilled about, and yet we keep it repressed. So when you start to feel resistance in your shoulders, maybe start to ask yourself, or you feel tension in your shoulders, is there something in life right now that you're resisting? I definitely have experiences working with people in my office who come in and they're like, I can think of one practice member specifically where she came in originally with shoulder pain, and she had obviously some degeneration in her neck, but she's coming in and she's like her idea is, or her story behind it is, she knows it's related to stress, but she feels really locked in her job, where feels like she's unappreciated, that she feels like she has to be the mother hen to everybody, that if she wasn't around to take care of it, then no one else would be able to take care of it. And in a sense, too, it gave her a sense of completion. It gave her a sense of satisfaction, because it feels good to feel like you're getting everybody relies on you. It feels good to feel like you're needed, you're a very important component. However, when we pile on so much, there's also perhaps an avoidance of going deeper within ourselves, that we push all our energy outside, and we avoid really asking ourselves truer, deeper questions of, what if there's something more for me that I'm not willing to acknowledge right now? What if, because I need to take care of my bills, I need to take care of my pets, I need to take care of my kiddos, I need to take care of my husband or my caregivers, I'm a caregiver, all these different things, right? So tension is resistance to your obligations that you feel that you must sustain or you perform even though you're not happy with it. Then when you feel painful, it is a sense of complete overwhelm, where you're carrying so much on your own and you just don't know how to stop. You don't know how to say no, or you're afraid to say no because there's a sense of needing to please, or perhaps there's even guilt or shame. With that said, too, with guilt and shame, when I was actually, interesting fact that I came across this morning when I was reading a post by Dr. Robert Melillo, who I'm starting to just dig into some of his work and studying more of the autism and ADHD type of protocols and studies behind it. He's a forefront in studying functional disconnection for children and adults who struggle with some of these sensory processing issues, as well as ADHD and functional and autism. And anyways, just following him, he was talking about how if you have an imbalance in your brain, literally imbalance, that means there's weaker areas in your brain, meaning there's weaker areas in your brain, then there's also some emotional disconnect. So he had pointed out that if your right side of your brain is weaker, then there tends to be an imbalance. Then the person may likely constantly feeling guilty or shame and having a hard time letting go of that. So when you think about imbalance in the brain as well, in terms of how it's processing the world, and you're feeling these emotions constantly, and then it's also going to translate to the physical body in terms of how you're holding your body. Sometimes one side of the body may be built compared to the other. more built compared to the other. So all these different aspects, it's all interconnected, right? Now, when you feel like your shoulders are constantly raised and you're not thinking about it too much, it also decreases how much breath you can bring in. It also means that you're most likely breathing a lot faster than you're aware of, and at the same time, your consciousness may be the underlying volume behind it, maybe experiencing fear or anxiety, and you may maybe even going to the extent of frozen shoulders, so not really being able to raise the arm above your shoulders, right? So what that means is that fear has set in so much, and we've repressed our emotions so much, our connection to what we want, truly how we feel, or what we're yearning, and we've pushed it back down because we have to take care of everything else, and there's a fear or anxiety of perhaps not pleasing others, or of not meeting the expectations that you've created for yourself in your mind, then all of a sudden that pressure is so high that somehow you may feel frozen in life. So all these different aspects in terms of how the shoulders speak to us is amazing and very lovely, I think, in itself. And it really requires us to be able to slow down and start to check in, because the first thing when we feel pain is just like, oh, I just want to get rid of it. I want to deal with this. This sucks. It's my bed. I need to sleep better. I need to eat better. And oftentimes there's also the mental emotional stress behind it. And if you honestly have any brain imbalance too, that's also going to affect your emotional health. So with that said, if you have any brain imbalance, you want to be able to address find a practitioner that can support in helping to balance your brain too. So with that said, I'm going to guide us into some motion to essentially, encourage you to move your body differently. And a lot of you may be sitting in your chairs just a lot, where you're in front of the computer or you're doing a lot of desk work, and understandably so, you got to get things done. And there's a world that your coworkers are relying on you to get things done and everything else. But the other aspect is to be able to still find some variation in the middle of your day, to not only move but check in with your breath, because as I had mentioned in that previous study that we were just kind of dissecting over, is just the fact that breath is really powerful to also stimulate a deep relaxation. And when we're in stressed state or in a fight-flight state, tendency is we breathe a lot faster, so we want to be able to slow down. And and I could say this from personal experience, because honestly, doing, like for instance, doing a radio show and finding a rhythm every single week, and how I show up, there's always a certain pressure that I have for myself. So notice, not necessarily shoulder pain, I don't feel shoulder pain, but more of what's going on with my breath I'm going to notice that through my body as well too. But in terms of how am I holding my breath because I'm holding back on something, or am I breathing really fast because I'm anticipating something in the future? So our breath speaks to us beautifully in so many different ways, and we have to really tune into our bodies in terms of that as well too. So with that said, let's go ahead and have some fun. If you're in a space where you can move around a little bit, you can sit in a chair for demonstration purpose, and for microphone purpose here, I'm going to stay mostly seated here. I also, rushing over here, forgot my yoga strap, but this is awesome, because for you members at home, you're like, I don't have any yoga straps. What do you want me to get? So the producer gave me this awesome Ethernet cord, so I just have like an Ethernet wire cord. So you just need something long, right? You can use an old tie or an old jump rope, or maybe even a towel, like a long beach towel that you can just hold on to. We're going to do a few different exercises here. So essentially, you're going to start off by taking the strap, and it's going to help you with encouraging some range of motion, especially if you're sitting in front of the computer, or you're just feeling tight. You are physically or emotionally feeling anxious, or you're feeling like you just need to move your body, open up your bodies around a little bit more. Here's a way to do that. So first start off with your strap, and you want to be able to take your strap so it's I'm stretching my arms out a little bit wider, so it's nice. My arms are nice and straight here. And so from here, you're going to take the strap down towards your waist, and then as you inhale, I don't know if the microphone will go this time. As you inhale, you're going to slowly reach the arms up and above, and then slowly exhale, lower down. So combine your movements with your breath. Inhale, take those arms straight up, and you're just bringing it up overhead, and then exhale down. Now, as you're doing this, see if your back has a tendency to overarch. So you don't want to overarch your back, so if there's a C curve on the back here, you want to keep your core engaged, so kind of roll the bowl of your pelvis forward a little bit, and from here, you're going to, so that stays nice and long, and you're actually engaging your stabilizing muscles along your core here. And as you're doing that, you're going to slowly reach and then lower. Now, as you're doing this, being very mindful of how your shoulder is moving, how your shoulder blades are moving, how your joints, your shoulders are moving too. Do you have a tendency when you bring those arms up to shrug their shoulders up, and then it's really hard to talk, and it's really weird, because then you can't breathe as well either. You want to drop the shoulder blades down, drop the shoulder joint, the shoulder complex down, so there's space between your neck and your shoulder, so maintaining that. So that means if you cannot necessarily bring the arms all the way up without shrugging the shoulders too high, that's okay. Maybe bending your elbows a little bit and then slowly bringing it up over your head. So you can modify this just like that, right? So inhale, take those arms up over your shoulders, neck stays long. And just take a few breaths here. And then as you exhale, slowly lower down. Okay? Now we're going to take it a little bit further. So you're going to take those arms up. And then from here, you're going to maybe slide your hands out a little bit wider, because you're going to take the strap behind you, so you're reaching behind. So this creates more of an extension and a stretch across the pecs, as well as the deltoids as well too, especially the interior deltoid, the front muscle that attaches to your shoulder to your arm. So from here, you're going to take that arm up and then maybe reach behind a little bit further. If this becomes too much for you, maybe widen your grip. Don't need to draw too tight on the strap here. And then pause there for a moment, and then maybe completing that range of motion. And then inhale, come all the way up, and exhale forward. So obviously, if you don't normally do this position, or if you have some shoulder issues or injury in the past that you're healing from, just be very mindful of the range of motion, and even a little bit goes a long way. And you might be able to just do some small motion here, or even without the strap, being able to take those arms out wide and then flip the palms open and rotate. And then from here, let the shoulder blades draw together as your heart opens up, and then releasing down. So you can do this with the strap, which creates a very dynamic stretch, because the strap will also pull on your muscles as well too. But you can also do this with smaller range of motion by just rotating your shoulders, rotating your palms of your hands, and then opening up and then closing down. So playing like with that is a lot of fun. I forgot to mention too, with I did a lot of forward discussion about our shoulders hunched forward and a lot of hiding our heart or kind of staying in that fear. You may also say, well, that's not true actually for me. I like to roll my shoulders back and let my chest my chest tends to be more open. You might notice in other people too. And here, this expression where just more of the emotional component is, what is it that I'm afraid of letting other people see or exposing? And so in a way, holding our chest out gives us a sense of confidence, like, oh wow, this person is really confident, they know what they're doing, and they're on top of the world, and the shoulders may be drawn back a little bit, and so in that state though, and the head's still drawn forward or whatever reason, but when it's more of an emotional disconnection of perhaps what are we not ready to face or are not wanting the world to see, or emotionally, what are we trying to hide from the world that we're personally struggling with. So some things to think about. But you might, now that kind of brings up the idea, well, what is the ideal shoulder position? So ideally, we want to be able to have your ear or your head aligned over your heart, so then your ear aligns directly over your shoulders, shoulder aligns over your hip joints align over your knee, and then the eyes of your ankle. That's the ideal position. So when I was talking about a person whose chest is kind of puffed forward and their shoulders are drawn back, maybe there's something that we want to appear confident. And honestly, this was a long time how I stood, and until my yoga teacher was doing some body interpretation, and although my front side felt really developed, my back muscles were less toned or less developed, or there was just it appears that I was just showing up like, oh yeah, she has everything figured out, and behind me there was a lot of insecurity and a lot of fear in terms of how I was showing up and how I worried about how others perceived me. So, some things to think about. Okay, so back to movement. So other things that we can look at for our shoulder movement. So we did this with the strap. You can bring it up, inhale, and then exhale, rotate back. Another way you can do it, and this is maybe a little bit harder to do with me sitting here, and Henry can coach, my producer can coach me on this next time, but I'm going to do my best to demonstrate. You're going to still hold on to your strap, and so you can mirror me or just follow my description if you're on the radio. But basically, I'm going to take my right arm, I'm going to reach over to the left, and then bring that arm over to the back, reach over around my head, and then lower the right arm down. Left arm follows, and then I crosses over behind myself, and then I take that arm across and I circle back. So I like to call it the helicopter. So it's like this windmill motion of my arms. So I'm going in one direction here. Maybe it's a clockwise direction, whatever you want to call it, right? So basically, right arm reaches up, crosses over my front, and then it reaches back as it stays crossed over, and then I lower the arm down. Left arm comes up behind me, and then circles back around. So I create a full, complete circle through my body. So what's really cool about this is it not only creates this beautiful range of motion through the shoulder where you're crossing over, you're extending, and you're opening, but you're also stretching along the rib cage as well too, the muscles between the rib cage, between the rib bones, and it's also loosening any of the mid-back tension that you may be experiencing as well too. So we can't just ignore shoulder or just do shoulder and ignore everything else. There's a whole complexity behind the shoulder in connection to the neck and connection to our mid-back as well. So some of these things to play around with, right? So obviously if you wanted to go the opposite direction, you definitely want to. Then you would lift your left arm up across in front of you, reach back and extend back, lower the left arm down, right arm follows behind you and reaches around. So you create this beautiful circular motion through using the straps. So you can do a lot just with that. And then another thing that you can do is, as you're doing these motions, is maybe hold it, so static. So for instance, now I'm going to do a little bit of a lateral bend over to my right, and I'm going to take my left arm up and across, and then I'm going to pull the right arm down, and then once again, I'm going to make sure that my lower back stays long. I'm not overarching or extending, and I'm just going to laterally bend over to one side, bending over to my right, and this stretches out the lateral border of my left side of my body. And then you want to do the same on the opposite side. Obviously, if one side feels tighter than the other, maybe put a little bit more energy onto that side or hold the position a bit longer. So not only I talked about a lot of singular frontal think it's the frontal plane motion of, when we do bicep curls, everything's forward. When we're walking, when we're running, everything's forward. When we're bicycling, same thing, right? Now we're trying to get to the sides of the body, frontal plane of the body here. And so that's really important as well too. Another really great little stretch here is taking, and this will stretch your neck, and then it's your neck, and then it's over to the opposite side towards your rhomboids between your shoulder blades. So what you do is you take, for instance, I'm going to demonstrate with my right arm. I'm going to take my right arm across, and then from here, I'm going to tuck my chin over towards my right arm that's extended forward. And then it's just a nice little stretch, and then I can take my left arm and just this nice little pull here. And what this does is it helps to lengthen out the fascial connection, or the musculature between your neck all the way down to the opposite side of your shoulder blade here. So this is a nice little stretch for the neck and the shoulders. Same thing, you want to do the opposite side. Reach the left arm forward across your body, crossing the midline. Right arm supports as you tuck your chin towards the left shoulder, and then drop your head and take a few long deep breaths here. So demonstrating from the back here. Right shoulder, right arm reaches, chin tucked. And then you can repeat the opposite side. You can hold for 3 breaths. It feels really good. Now another one that I like to be able to do, and sometimes you can do it standing, actually you can do these all standing, is more of a left rotation. So you're going to take the arm out and a bit of a rotation through your body. So what you're going to do is left rotation, and then from here you're going to bend over to your right. So what this does is it helps to open up across the complex of your pectoral muscles, and then at the same time stretch open towards the serratus anterior and the lats as well on the left side here. So what you're doing is right arm crosses the front of your body, left arm reaches back, and then you just you continue to bend over to your right. It's a little bit harder to describe over the radio. It takes practice. Same thing, left side, left arm reaches forward, left arm, and then the right arm reaches back. You rotate to your right, and then you can do a nice little stretch through this here. So let's see, another great one that I like to be able to utilize is, it's kind of similar to a downward dog, except you're holding with your elbows bent. And you can do this on a table, or you can do it on a chair. So this is really great to open up the thoracic region, the mid-back of your torso, as well as just a nice stretch open through the tricep muscles, as well as you're opening up the shoulder girdle a little bit more, and a nice stretch along towards your lats as well. So you can do this on the table, and so fingers crossed that Henry can catch this on the camera, but you're going to bend your elbows on the table, and what you do is you lean back, and you slowly just let your chest drop towards the ground, and you're stretching along the front of your chest here, and you're stretching along your back. So I'm going to try this standing, so I'll just demonstrate. So the way I had it positioned was basically elbows on the back of the chair, elbows bent at 90 degrees, and I can press my hands together or just keep them about shoulder width apart. I rest my upper arms, bent upper arms on the back of the chair, and then I stepped back as if I'm doing a down dog. And it's a really great stretch through the whole entire torso, honestly. But it's nice to open up the shoulder as well too. So that's a lot of fun parts behind that. And my goodness, time goes by fast. So we want to be able to, lead into our meditation, and so this is just more of a simple breath work. But before we do that, I wanted to share with you a little bit more about a gift that I want to offer to you listeners out there. And this gift that I have is actually a 15-day trial to the BrainTap to the BrainTap app. And it's a really great app. Right behind me, you can see this. Once you download, you set up your account and the app itself, and you'll have access to all the different sessions, which incorporates guided visualization and some really great neuro-linguistic programming type of meditations as well too. And so, you get an opportunity to try out, especially if you struggle with meditation, if you need some really great music to listen to and relax to at the end of the day, on top of incorporating binaural beats, which helps to entrain the brain, then I highly recommend this app. And you can go to specialbraintapgift.com, which is my affiliate website. It's called www.specialbraintapgift.com, and you'll have access to 15 days to all the hundreds of recordings that BrainTap offers for stress-free, for worry, for children and learning and sleep and wakefulness. So there's the power behind BrainTap, and I'm really excited, and I'll have Patrick Porter, the developer of BrainTap, on next month. But the power behind BrainTap is it's actually a visual auditory entrainment device. And so obviously with the app, you will only have the auditory aspect to it. In our office, we actually utilize this for our practice members, which you have a headset that emits LED lights to the ears, as well to the points of the ears, as well as a visor that comes over, and it's pulsating at a specific frequency. The oscillation actually creates a deep relaxation for the overall cognitive functions of our brain. And so it's really, really supportive. A lot of people, MDs, chiropractors, naturopaths, or even therapists who utilize this, found that this is a really powerful tool to help learn and to de-stress as well too. I personally started using this before I actually incorporated it into our practice, and I was a sleep-deprived mom and who was really stressed. And so when I started utilizing this about 3 years ago, it was a no-brainer for me, especially understanding the power of meditation. So if you're interested in just simply trying the app itself and just listening to the audio sessions, I have 15 days for free that you'll be able to try it out. And then after that, there's really great rates for the subscription. And if you want to find out more about the headset itself, you can also go to braintapwithdrlynn.com, and you can be able to learn more about the headset and the science behind it. And I'm super excited, as I mentioned before, to have Dr. Patrick Porter on in July, and he'll be jumping on and we'll be able to talk more about how he came to develop this, what is really truly the science behind it, the power behind it, and can't wait to be able to share that piece with you. Now, with that said, we're coming close to the end of our show, so I'd like to be able to end our practice or end our session with just an abbreviated breathing exercise, a visualization exercise. And so you can start off. So before I leave you with a meditation, I want to be able to just outline. I want to leave you feeling relaxed and not go into too much detail afterwards. But I really love listening, hearing back from people, input for our show. My husband and I rotate every week in terms of who's hosting, and if you'd like to learn more about the things that we're doing in our office, feel free to follow us at Wild and Precious Optimal Living on Facebook or Instagram too. And we'd love to be able to really send the message out that there's so many different tools out there and promote just a sense of positivity and support for emotional health and well-being, and also for brain health as well too. So it takes a lot, honestly, to be able to show up to do something that's outside our comfort zone, especially for me. So the fact that I guess I'm really grateful to have a space to be able to find my own voice in this journey. So I appreciate everybody jumping on to the show and listening in. So with that said, let's go ahead and start your meditation. It's just a quick little one, but I'm going to have you sit back from wherever you're at, or you can lay down on your back. You're going to take one hand over your heart space and then one hand over your belly space. So we talked about how when we're stressed, we don't realize, but we may hyperventilate, which actually changes the blood chemistry in our body. And so what I'm going to have you do here is, as your eyes are closed, we're going to slow that pace of your breath down. And your eyes are closed, and as you're doing that, I want you to breathe into the belly space and slowly release out through the mouth. So your one hand is on your chest, and just making sure that the chest stays somewhat relaxed, stays relaxed, and not as much motion there. Oftentimes we breathe through our chest, and another segment will definitely explore more on breathing. But for today, it's just keeping your chest more stable, but most of the movement you're going to feel as you're breathing in and out is through your belly. So in through the nose for a count of 4. Nice full breath into the hand that's on the belly. And exhale out. And then inhaling, count of 4. And exhaling out through the mouth. Inhaling a little bit more, perhaps counting up to count of 6 now in your mind. And exhaling out through the mouth. Now, as you're practicing this breath, you're just experiencing the movement of the breath coming towards your belly space, that full belly breath. So you're engaging the diaphragm a bit more, and your shoulders are relaxed, your neck stays long. I want you to just start to think about, visualize how good your body feels when you are doing things that make you feel good while you're doing them. So maybe think about a moment in your life where you're playing with your dog, or you're cuddling with your cat, or you're embracing a loved one, or you're taking a really nice bubble bath, or perhaps playing with your kids, or just being at the park, or something that really just makes you feel good, that you know that, oh man, yeah, I love doing that. And as you're visualizing that and you're breathing, your body will start to drop into that creative state, that healing state, that feel good state. And your heart rhythm will start to slow down, and your respiration rate will start to slow down as well too, naturally. And if you're having a hard time thinking about something that makes you feel good while you're doing them, then maybe it's time to ask yourself that question: how long has it been since you felt good doing anything? And maybe it's time for a change. Maybe it's time to incorporate something different in your life. So just staying with your breath and visualizing the experience of doing something that makes you feel so good, that's positive and uplifting for you and worthwhile for you. And staying with your breath, staying with the energy, visualization. So for this next week, just as you go through day to day, just checking in with yourself: how am I breathing? Am I feeling stressed? How's my shoulders? Where are my shoulders at? How am I moving? Am I moving my shoulders differently? Am I exploring? Am I reaching my arms out wide to the things that challenge me, that make me feel excited, that that makes me feel loved, makes me feel like I'm heard? Am I reaching for things that satisfy me and makes me feel fulfilled? Those are things that you can start to ask yourself. Not maybe in the next week, but it's a good start is just to ask yourself every single day, for the next week, and seeing where that takes you. And then the question that, for each day, asking yourself, what are those things that make me feel good while I'm doing them? And maybe making a list and asking yourself, are you doing those things that's on your list that make you feel good? And if you're not, making sure that you schedule time to do that, because self care is just as important as everyone else's care. And people, even if your tendency is to go out and do things, this tendency is to worry about everybody else. Things won't get done unless your health is well as well too, as well. So things won't be as well as unless you are well yourself. So tongue tighter. Anyways, thank you so much for joining me, and be sure to join in next Friday at 2:30 p.m. with Dr. Sam as he brings in more brain science to you. And have a beautiful rest of your weekend. Take care.